So first of all, who was Inez Holden?
Inez Holden is a mystery. Not very much is known about her early life. But she was a novelist, she was a literary figure. In the 1930s and 40s she was friends with variously Stevie Smith, George Orwell, Cyril Connolly, Ogwen Wall. She sat for Augustus John, who was still a very important painter at the time. She wrote novels, she wrote essays, she tried to get scripts onto the BBC, especially during the war, not often succeeding. She was a very singular individual. She was unusual. She had lovers, no children, never married, and I think she was very popular, but she didn't follow the crowd. She was an unusual and very interesting woman.
And there's three sort of different pieces of writing in this book, aren't there? Two. So there's a memoir and a novella.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you explain what they're both about and how they relate to each other?
Okay. The novella is called Night Shift, and it's about 5 nights and 1 day following the life of workers who work night shift in a factory making parts for cameras during the Second World War, during the Blitz in North London. And that's all quite straightforward. It's extremely moving and very imminent, very direct. You feel you're in there on the factory floor among the benches listening to the conversations. The diary is her personal diary, entries from her personal diary put together from 1939, and presumably it goes on past the end of the war. But the section she chose to publish, as it was different at the time, cover the Blitz. So you get a sense of what people are thinking and talking about from her recording, her reportage, from the very beginning of the war, through the phony war, through the Blitz, and a little bit after that. What is interesting is that many episodes in Night Shift come from the diary, because Holden herself worked in a camera parts factory. She worked as a VAD nurse. She went to the BBC to try and sell her scripts and to record. So there are echoes and reflections from one text to the other. And it's perfectly obvious which is fact and which is fiction, but it's very interesting to see what she's done with the fact and make it into fiction, and how she's drawn episodes from her own experience and put them in the novella. And they just work perfectly together as a single volume. And as you see, it's not very thick. So they're good short texts. And they came to me because Kristen Blumel, who has edited this volume, she's an American academic from Monmouth University in New Jersey, has been teaching these texts by Holden and others for many years, and was sick and tired of not having a proper book to teach her students from, that her students could buy. She was working from the nastiest, scrappiest photocopies I've ever seen. And it took us a very long time to clean up the text, because she sent me the PDF of her photocopies. We digitised them, and then we were left with a horrific mess. It made no resemblance to English at all. So I had to use an editor outside, get an editor outside to go through the text for me, just putting it back together again. It was in such a disastrous state.
So have they been published together before, or is this the first time? Right.
This is the first time. They both came out as individual volumes in the 40s, but not again. Again, she's forgotten. No one really paid any attention to her once she died.
So why did you want to publish them together?
Because they're about the Second World War. It's a perfect moment to start republishing work from and about the Second World War, because the centenary of the war was coming upon us. It's also because this is a new voice. She has not been paid attention to. When the literature of the Second World War is studied, or was studied, from the 1980s onwards, there was a general feeling that women didn't write and the only important writers were men. So it's very important to try and widen the range of literature that's available to be studied and to be read and enjoyed, that covers not just the soldiers, but people who didn't fight, and also the women's voice, and also voices of people who may not have had access to being put in novels before.
How do they enrich our understanding historically of what it was like to live through the Blitz?
They make it very immediate. You get a strong sense of sounds and smells. You get a sense of what the body does when it goes into shock. If you've experienced the physical wave, the effect of a bomb close by, in which a door has been knocked flat onto your friend, and you lift the door up and she's still there, she's alive, but she's unconscious. But you go into some kind of arrested shock, and what it's like trying to cope with that in daily life. And the experience of walking home through glass and grit and stone and plaster underfoot and people's belongings thrown everywhere, not even knowing if your own apartment is still intact. Do you have any food in the fridge? Where are you going to eat? People ate out in cafes so much because they didn't have kitchens anymore. They were just being bombed to bits. So that kind of very important, realistic domestic detail doesn't often get written about. I don't really want to say women only write about domesticity, but I can't think of many examples of wartime writing where the focus is on how is my home, where am I going to sleep tonight, where are my friends. So this is an interesting angle.